The Archive of Lost Lullabies, the library built on sighs. The library had no door, not a real one, anyway. The only entrance was through sleep, and even then, only if you drifted off with a forgotten tune in your chest and a memory of comfort you couldn't place. Cora had been the keeper for as long as she could remember, which wasn't very long at all. Time folded strangely in the archive. Some days bloomed in soft melodies and passed in a blink. Others dragged like a cello's bow across a string stretched too thin. She lived among the shelves. Vast, soaring towers of parchment, humming boxes, jars of melody, and scrolls tied with threads of mist. Each aisle breathed. The floor whispered. The ceiling, a night sky of shifting constellations, flickered with stars that pulsed in time with the songs asleep below. Her job was simple: listen, label, and soothe. Every day, Cora would take her satchel of soft thread quills and memory ink, walking barefoot across the marble hush of the halls. Songs came to her, sometimes weeping, sometimes shivering, often confused. And she would give them rest. Lullabies were especially fragile. They decayed fastest when forgotten. Some arrived as only a hum in a jar, others as lull fragments bound in tiny books with no spine. Today began like any other, except the silence held its breath a second too long. Cora paused in front of section eclipses. The entire row was made of bottles, clear glass vials, each one corked and glowing faintly. The moment she stepped closer, one of them shivered. That wasn't supposed to happen. She melted. The vial was tiny, barely larger than her thumb, and inside a shimmer of blue light swirled, pulsing erratically like a heartbeat lost in fog. A melody, broken and alone. She uncorked it. The note that escaped was delicate, E-flat, drawn out like a sigh and pierced with longing. It didn't fly away like the others. It stayed, hovered. It hummed. Cora frowned. "You're not just a note," she whispered. "You're looking for something." She held the vial close to her cheek. It was warm. No, yearning. This wasn't just a sound. This was a fragment. The archive rarely made mistakes. It was ancient, careful, alive in its own quiet way. But this fragment had arrived unmarked, unsorted, and humming of loneliness. Cora pulled the melody threader from her satchel, a thin silver needle strung with a string of silence. With it, she could stitch fragments into memory, weaving them into dreams to follow their origins. She hesitated only a second. "All right, little one," she murmured. "Let's find who you belong to." She dipped the needle into the fragment's hum. Light wrapped around the thread, turning it soft violet. The air shifted, the constellations above blinked. 1, 2, 3 stars dimming into slumber. And then the thread pulled taut, tugging toward the farthest end of the archive. Beyond the shelves, past the low creoles and chorus domes, into the dream sacks. Cora had never gone there before. Even the oldest lullabies warned of it. The dream sacks were the deepest shelves, where songs weren't sorted, where they wandered, where pieces waited without time or order, bleeding memory into sleep. Only the bravest keepers had ventured there before, and even they returned changed. But Cora looked at the glowing thread in her hand. The hum in the vial grew softer, curling into a whisper of a child's breath. Someone had loved this lullaby once. Someone still needed it. She stood. The marble grew darker as she walked, shadows thickening between the shelves like ink in water. Her breath grew quieter. Even her bare feet made no sound. At the edge of the known stacks, a gentle breeze greeted her, cool and strange. It smelled of wet leaves, old rain, and paper tears. Ahead, a single archway carved in moonstone. No words above it, only a glyph. The symbol for unfinished. She stepped through. Suddenly, everything slowed. Dreams drifted through the air like dandelion seeds, some glowing, others frayed. One brushed her cheek, and she gasped. A memory not her own. A mother rocking in a broken chair. A child asleep in her lap. A fire dying low. The air humming with a tune not yet finished. Cora blinked and moved on. The thread pulled her right, down a spiral staircase made of low fragments stitched into wind. She descended carefully, passing shelves of broken music boxes and sleeping, dreaming beasts. Gentle dragons curled in low loops, baby stars tucked inside snow globes the sound. Then silence. Not the peaceful kind. The hollow kind. At the base of the stairs was a small alcove. A single cradle sat in the middle, carved of black walnut and lined with violet moss. And floating above it, suspended in a bubble of time, was a composer. He was young, barely more than a boy, curled into himself like a question, arms around a small broken lyre. His chest rose and fell, but only barely, as if he'd been asleep for centuries. The thread led right to him. Cora stepped forward. The hum in the viol quickened. The moment she drew near, the fragment leapt, returned to the lyre. It settled there like a final breath. The boy stirred. Just a twitch, his fingers around the strings. A whisper escaped his lips. "Mama?" Cora gasped. This was no ordinary lullaby. This wasn't just a forgotten song. This was a sleep-bound composer. And the lullaby wasn't broken. It was unfinished, because the one who wrote it had fallen asleep before he could end it. She stepped back, heart pounding. What now? Could she wake him? Should she? She looked at his face, peaceful, but tired. His lips were dry. His lashes flickered like he was dreaming inside a dream. He was waiting. Cora did the only thing she could. She sat beside the cradle and began to hum. The echo beneath the cradle. Cora's voice trembled at first. She hadn't sung in a long time, not out loud. Her role was to preserve lullabies, not to perform them. But this moment, this was different. This boy, this cradle, this half-sleeping lyre, they weren't waiting for a keeper. They were waiting for someone brave enough to finish the song. So she sang. Not words, not yet, just hums and soft vowel tones. Warm, low, rising slowly like mist curling up from a forgotten teacup. Her voice wove into the silence, gentle and uncertain, searching for a harmony in the air. The boy's shoulders shifted. Then his fingers, slow and unsure, plucked one soft note from the lyre. It matched her hum. Cora blinked. The glowing thread still ran between them, now brighter, pulsing with each shared sound. She leaned closer, her voice deepening. She sang what she felt, not what she knew. The sorrow of an unfinished tune, the ache of something beautiful left waiting. The melody grew stronger, more stable. The archive above them hummed in approval, faint winds of forgotten lullabies stirring in distant halls. The boy stirred again. His lips moved. I forgot the end, he whispered. His eyes were still closed, but his face had changed. He wasn't lost anymore. He was remembering. Cora reached for his hand, not touching, just letting the thread guide the air between them. You never had to write the ending alone, she whispered. He exhaled. Then his fingers danced. Slow, sure, beautiful. A lullaby not just for sleep, but for return. A song to carry a soul back from the edge of forgetting. Notes floated like dandelion seeds. Dreams shifted around them. And the bubble, that soft shell holding him, began to dissolve. Cora stepped back as light spilled from the lyre. The melody curled around them both like a ribbon of moonlight, shimmering and true. For a moment, she could see into his dreams. A crib beside a window, a song hummed by candlelight. A mother with tired eyes and a voice like summer rain. He gasped, opened his eyes. The boy blinked, sitting up slowly. He looked younger than she thought, maybe 10 or 11, with a delicate face and wide, sea-gray eyes. Where am I? He asked, voice dry. Cora smiled. You're in the Archive of Lost Lullabies, she said gently. You wrote a song once, a beautiful one, but you fell asleep before you could finish it. He touched a lyre in his lap. I was trying to remember her voice. Cora felt her throat tighten. She remembers yours. The boy looked at her, eyes widening. You brought me back? She nodded. I'm Cora. I'm the keeper here. At least, I think I still am. He smiled faintly. I'm Milo. His name felt like a chord resolving. Milo looked at the shelves. This place is made of songs? All the forgotten ones, Cora said. Lullabies left unsung. Pieces that never found their endings. We keep them safe. He nodded, then looked to the lyre. Can I finish it now? Cora stepped back and nodded. It's your song. Milo raised the lyre. This time the lullaby was whole. A soft beginning, a bittersweet middle, and a gentle, loving end. The kind of end that tucks you in without needing to say goodbye. When the last note faded, the cradle glowed, then dissolved. A wind stirred in the chamber. The shelves shuddered. And far above in the heart of the archive, a star flickered back to life. Milo looked up, blinking. That was her star, wasn't it? Cora smiled. I think so. He stood, bare feet pressing the floor, like he wasn't quite real yet. Can I stay? Cora hesitated. The archive was many things. A sanctuary, a museum, a memory. But it was also a place of waiting. It wasn't meant for the awake. You could, she said carefully. But I think someone out there still remembers you. Someone who needs to hear your song. Milo looked down, his hands curled around the lyre. And scared. Cora reached out and gently tapped the thread still glowing between them. You won't go alone. The thread shimmered once, then snapped gently from her hand and coiled around his wrist like a promise. The alcove brightened. Milo began to fade. But before he vanished completely, he looked back and said, Thank you for hearing me. And then he was gone. The glow in the cradle vanished. The lyre rested quietly on the floor. Cora stood in silence for a long time. Then she picked up the instrument, pressed it to her chest, and walked back up the spiral staircase, humming the song as she went, so it would never again be forgotten. The lyre's silence. The halls greeted her with hush and hush alone. As Cora climbed from the dream stacks, carrying the quiet lyre in her arms, the archive changed. Subtle things. Shadows bowed away from her instead of toward. The stars overhead, normally flickering like slow breathing, glowed with a steadier rhythm. The bottles in section eclipsis no longer rattled. Even the scrolls seemed content, their threads lying flat, unstirred by the usual sighing winds. Something had shifted. She returned the lyre to her desk at the central dome, the heart seat, as the old keepers once called it. She placed it gently on the velvet-tufted surface, then sat back in the curved chair with its music-stitched arms, and really felt, the stillness. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. No new notes whispered. No jars trembled. No threads glimmered with urgency. The lullabies had grown still. And Cora realized, with the softness of dew on glass, that for the first time since she could remember, the archive was content. She looked at the lyre. Its strings were faintly silver, humming with something like memory. It didn't hum outwardly anymore. Instead, it glowed inward, holding Milan's song complete and resting, the way lullabies should be. Cora didn't feel sadness. She felt weightlessness. Until, tick. It was soft, barely audible. But in the archive, even silence is a sound. And this wasn't silence. She turned. A jar. Small, square, tinted green like the sea before a storm, resting awkwardly between two scrolls in section Selah, which usually held only breathing tunes, songs meant to soothe without words. The jar tick-ticked again. She approached it slowly. Inside, something flickered. Not a hum, not a melody, but a rhythm. A pulse without tone. A heartbeat searching for its skin. Cora felt the weight in her chest shift. This wasn't a lullaby. This was something older. She removed the jar, feeling the cool press of glass against her fingertips. It vibrated, just faintly, like a drum remembering a hand that once knew how to tap love into its skin. Cora opened the cork, and instead of a note, a voice whispered out. Hush, hush, you'll wake the sea. The air grew cold. The constellations above blinked once, then rearranged, suddenly spinning toward the west wing of the archive, where no shelves stood. Only mirrors. Cora's heart lurched. The mirror wing wasn't her domain. It belonged to another keeper, long gone. The one who cataloged his intimate echoes, the lullabies that were sung so many times they became reflections instead of originals. Distorted, powerful, sometimes dangerous. The jar trembled in her hand again. Cora stepped back. But the whisper came once more. Hush, hush, you'll wake the sea. And this time, a low rumble rolled through the floor beneath her feet. The jar slipped from her hand. It didn't shatter. It melted. And from the glass pooled at her feet, a single black thread began to unravel across the marble, gliding like oil, silent and sure, leading her away from the heart seat, into the mirror wing. Cora hesitated. Everything in her wanted to run. But the archive had chosen her, just as it had chosen Milo's lullaby, and it was choosing this, rhythm. She grabbed the lyre, just in case, and followed the black thread into the reflections. The reflection keeper. The mirror wing was colder than she remembered. Cora's bare feet pressed against the chilled tiles. The silence broken only by the faint ripple of her breath and the soft swish of her cloak. The black thread ahead of her snaked across the floor, gliding with purpose, vanishing into the glass of the first great mirror, a towering oval framed in silver ivy. She stood before it, heart tightening. The mirror didn't show her reflection. It showed a girl who looked like her, but younger or older. It was hard to tell. The girl was holding a broken jar and staring at Cora with a mixture of warning and grief. Cora reached out. The reflection blinked first, then whispered, "You shouldn't come here alone." The surface of the mirror rippled. The black thread slithered inward, pulled into the liquid glass. Without another thought, Cora stepped forward, lyre in hand, and let the mirror swallow her. And world flipped. It didn't feel like falling or floating. It felt like being rewound. Cora gasped as she stumbled into a vast shadowed gallery. The mirrors here stretched infinitely upward, and each one flickered faintly, not with her reflection, but with others. Children, mothers, empty cradles, music boxes held in trembling hands, all singing or whispering the same refrain. "Hush, hush, you'll wake the sea." She turned in a slow circle, breath shallow. A black thread slithered ahead, leading her deeper, its edges bleeding into mirrors as it moved. Then, movement. From the edge of her eye, a shade shifted in one of the reflections. She spun. Gone. Another flicker, this time closer. A silhouette in the glass, tall, draped in robes made of sheet music, face hidden in a blur of melody ink. Cora whispered, "Who are you?" The figure appeared behind her. She didn't hear footsteps, only the sound of pages turning. She turned slowly. He stood at the end of the hall, a keeper's cloak draped over him, far older than hers. Silver embroidery, shaped like forgotten clefts, run along the hem. His face was featureless, but somehow familiar. "I am the reflection keeper," he said, his voice the sound of parchment folding in wind. "I guard what repeats." The air thickened. The mirrors hummed. "You opened a sealed jar," he said, stepping forward, hands clasped behind his back. "That rhythm was not for you." Cora lifted her chin. "Who was it for?" "For her," he said, gesturing toward a mirror. It showed a girl, younger than Cora, barefoot, hair wet, standing on a rocky shore with waves crashing behind her. She was singing through tears. No one stood near her, no arms around her, just the sea. The lullaby she sang, broken, desperate, echoed into the wind and disappeared. Cora's chest clenched. She sang a lullaby to the ocean. She sang to her grief, the keeper said. She sang because no one else did. The girl in the mirror collapsed her knees. The image shattered, shards vanishing into shadow. "That song," he whispered, never stopped echoing. Cora glanced down. The black thread now wrapped around her ankles like inked vines. She was never heard, the keeper said. Not truly, not fully. And so her lullaby became a warning. Cora tightened her grip on the lyre. "But what if we listen now?" The keeper tilted his head. "She's gone." Cora shook her head. Lullabies don't die, they wait. The mirrors pulsed. One behind her flickered into flame. A bright shore, the same girl older now, standing at the edge of water, holding her arms out like wings. "She became the sea sleeper," the keeper said. "She sings to dreams, but no dream dares come close. They fear her sorrow." Cora felt tears press against her eyes. Then maybe it's time someone sang back. The keeper's voice dropped. "She will hear only what is honest." Cora lifted the lyre. "So let her hear this." He sat on the cold marble floor, closed her eyes, and played not the lullaby she had saved, but the one still forming. A tune without perfection. A song not of comfort, but of acknowledgement. Of seeing the pain. Of not looking away. The lyre sang. The mirrors rippled. And from the furthest one, the shore mirror, a hum returned. A girl's voice, faint, rising. "Where the sea sings back." The hum grew louder, not in pitch, but in presence. It wasn't just the voice of the girl on the shore anymore. It was the ocean behind her, the wind curling through her tangled hair, the ache held in her chest when no one answered her lullaby. It was sorrow deep enough to anchor ships and lullabies too heavy to float. Cora kept playing, but her fingers shook. She felt the pain now, not just heard it, as if the lyre's strings had become veins, carrying the grief of the girl into her own chest. It pressed against her ribs like water rising in a locked throat. Her vision blurred. "I see you," she whispered, though her voice cracked. The girl in the mirror opened her mouth wider. Her song burst out, raw and unfinished. It wasn't a melody, it was a storm. Mirrors shattered down the corridor, glass slicing the silence into ribbons. A wind howled from the broken reflections, rushing around Cora in spirals of sound. The hall trembled. The ink-like vines on the floor lifted like tendrils in a current. Still, Cora played, because she understood now. This wasn't the song meant to end. It was a song that needed to be held. She leaned her head down, resting her cheek against the lyre's wooden body, and let her hands slow, not stopping the music, but cradling it, letting it breathe, letting it ache. A hush fell. The winds pulled back, and from the cedar mirror, the shore, the girl, the sea, something shifted. The girl stopped screaming. She looked up. Her eyes, for the first time, met Cora's. And then, the impossible. She stepped out. The mirror didn't ripple or break. It simply yielded, like it had been waiting, like it belonged to her. The girl stood on the archive floor, barefoot, sea salt clinging to her ankles, hair soaked with stormlight. Cora didn't move. The girl knelt beside her. They sat in silence. Then the girl reached out and gently placed her hand over the lyre strings. Together they pressed down. A single trembling note rang out. Then another, and another. A lullaby, yes, but no longer lonely, no longer unheard. The reflection keeper stepped from the shadows. His head bowed low, not in warning, but in reverence. "She's returned," he said. "Her song has changed." Cora looked at the girl, not a stranger anymore, a keeper of echoes, a child once broken by silence, now whole through harmony. "What's your name?" Cora asked. The girl smiled faintly. "Sella." A name shaped like pause, a name shaped like peace. The archive shifted above them, a constellation realigned. A melody bloomed like a flower through frost. Cora stood, offering her hand. "Will you stay?" Sella nodded. Not as a song, not as a sorrow, but as a keeper. And the mirrors stopped showing what was lost. They began showing what had been found. A new keeper's verse. Sela's hair still dripped with salt water, though no puddle formed at her feet. It was as if the sea had come with her, but left its weight behind. Cora and Sela rose together, hands still brushing the lyre's frame. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The music between them had said what words couldn't, and the archive had heard it. Above, the constellations pulsed once more. And then, for the first time in centuries, a new shelf unfurled from the marble. It rose slow and tall, carved from driftwood and mother of pearl, its empty compartments glowing faintly. A name etched itself across its face in quiet silver letters. Keeper Sela, Songs of the Remembered Sea. Sela's eyes widened. The reflection keeper stepped forward, his once blurred face now sharpened with dignity, though his features remained unreadable. Like an old song you could hum but never fully recall. He placed a small glass case into the first slot on the shelf. Inside, a single string of seagrass, twisted into a circle, quietly humming. "One day," he said to Sela, "someone will sing your echoes too." Then he turned to Cora. "You've done what few ever could. You finished a song not with sound, but with silence. You listened." Cora flushed. "I didn't finish it, I just stayed." "That," the keeper said, "is what endings are made of." The mirrors dimmed behind them. One by one, they returned to stillness. No longer flickering with suffering, no longer broken. Just waiting. But not out of loneliness, out of peace. Sela stepped toward the shelf bearing her name. She ran her fingers along the edge, not claiming it, but accepting it. Then she turned to Cora. I'd like to learn, she said. Cora smiled. Then you already are. Together, they left the mirror wing. Days, or maybe dreams, passed. Sela learned quickly. She could hum harmonies that bent the air, read the sigh of paper like a second language, and coax half-forgotten tunes back into fullness. Where Cora tended jars and scrolls, Sela tended vessels, driftwood boxes, hollowed shells, tiny cradles that whispered to her when she passed. They didn't speak often while working, but when they did, their voices felt like two halves of a shared breath. And one evening, as the archive glowed with low, drowsy gold, a song floated down from the skylight. Not broken, not forgotten, just unfinished. It was a lullaby, sung by a child in the waking world, half hummed, half cried. Sela looked to Cora. Cora nodded. It's yours. Sela took a thread of silver, tuned her lyre, now strung with one of her own strands of seagrass, and stepped into the dream stacks. She was not alone. Not anymore. The Archive of Lost Lullabies had gained a new voice. And in the deepest shelves, where the silence once wept, songs began to hum themselves whole again. The lullaby of return. Cora watched Sela vanish into the dream stacks, her cloak trailing behind like the last breath of a wave. There was no fear in her steps, only quiet knowing. Cora turned back toward the heart seat. The archive felt different now. Not just quieter, but deeper. As if a whole new chamber had opened. Not of stone or shelves, but of trust. The way music shifts when someone starts to harmonize instead of lead. She passed section eclipses. The bottles were still. She passed the cradle from Milo's alcove, now gently rocking, empty but not lonely. Inside, the strings of his old lyre had woven themselves into a soft net, catching specks of dreamlight like fireflies. Then something caught her ear. A melody. Small. Wandering. It echoed down from the skylight like a thread of breath spun into song. Not sad, not frightened, but searching. Cora paused beneath the stars. A sound jar hovered slowly downward on a parachute of stitched lullaby fabric. Golden thread with a faint seam of sweet dust glittering along the edge. She caught it gently. It pulsed in her hand, a soft three-quarter rhythm, like footsteps skipping on stone. Not quite a lullaby, not quite a song. She held it up to her ear and listened. Inside, a child's voice hummed half a verse, then giggled, then silence. She smiled. This wasn't broken. This was beginning. Sela would guide it. Cora placed the jar in a small basket, marked unfinished and unafraid, a newer category they'd created together. She ran her fingers across the archive's marble wall and felt it breathe. Then, like a change in wind, the sound of footsteps echoed behind her. Sela emerged from the dream stacks, hair glowing faintly, seagrass lyre now looped over her back. She looked older, not by years, by knowing. I found her, Sela whispered. Cora's eyes widened. She was hiding in a doorway, between grief and letting go. Cora stepped forward. And I sang with her, Sela said. Not to her, with her. Cora's throat tightened. And did she return? Sela didn't speak. Instead, she reached into her satchel and lifted out a music globe, a clear sphere usually reserved for songs that glowed too bright for paper. Inside it, a small girl danced in slow, dreamlike circles, her feet never touching the bottom. A hummingbird of notes circled her head. She wasn't asleep. She was becoming. She's not a lullaby, Sela whispered. She's a wake-up song. The archive pulsed warmly. Cora took the sphere and placed it on a velvet pedestal, the kind only used once before, for a dream that bloomed into a real-world lullaby sung by thousands. Above them, a new star lit the ceiling. Small, soft, steady. It blinked, twice, then hummed a note that only those who truly listened could hear. Sela looked at it. She's going to remember the melody when she wakes. Cora nodded. And maybe she'll sing it to someone else. The archive didn't cheer or celebrate. It simply expanded, one breath wider, one dream deeper. Because a lullaby had returned to its beginning, and its beginning was no longer alone. Songs that choose you. The moonlight had no source, but it bathed the archive in a pale hush. Cora and Selah sat side by side in the whisper niche, a curved alcove made of chimewood, every surface resonating with the vibrations of old songs long since recorded. It was where keepers came to rest, to think, or to let the melodies settle into their bones. Selah held the seagrass lyre across her lap, her fingers lightly stroking the frame. The globe with the dancing child rested between them, faintly pulsing in time with some distant heartbeat. "She'll wake soon," Selah whispered. Cora nodded, "and she'll hum something she won't remember learning." They sat in silence. Then Selah turned her gaze toward the darker end of the archive. "Do you think there are songs we haven't heard yet?" Cora smiled softly. "There are always more." "But what if they don't want to be found?" Cora looked into the shadows, then said, "Then maybe they don't need a keeper." Selah tilted her head. "Then what do they need?" Cora turned toward her. "A witness." That night the archive sighed. Shelves rearranged themselves, just a few inches here and there, not to confuse, but to invite. A new corridor opened behind the reflection wing. No one had touched it in ages. Its sign was simple, echoes that never left. Selah ventured there in the early dawn of dreamlight. She walked barefoot, as keepers always did, letting the songs touch her skin before her mind. The corridor wasn't cold or dark. It was patient. Inside the first alcove, she found a small, folded letter. No music, no parchment. Just words. She opened it. It read, "I used to hum to her when no one else could see. But now I'd forget her name, and the tune hides from me." No signature, no context. Only that. Selah placed her fingers over the paper and closed her eyes. And waited. After 3 breaths, the letter pulsed once, faintly, like a ripple returning to shore. Then a note drifted from the wall. Just one. It smelled faintly of cinnamon and moss. She cupped it in her palm, then smiled. That evening, Selah brought the note to Cora. She didn't forget the song, Selah said. She just forgot how to carry it. Cora placed the note inside a new jar. "What should we call it?" she asked. Selah thought a moment, then said, "A lullaby with no one to sleep." Cora nodded and added the label, "For those who stayed awake too long." The archive grew that season, not in size, but in memory. Children began to dream more clearly. Mothers found themselves humming tunes they didn't know. Even fathers, once silent, began to murmur melodies while rocking tired infants at dusk. Somewhere between sleep and forgetting, the archive whispered back to the world it had been made to protect. Not loudly, not suddenly, but like a hand brushing your shoulder in the dark, to remind you that even forgotten songs remember you. When silence learns to sing, the next fragment came not as sound, not as light, but as absence. It drifted into the archive like a shadow without source, soft, slow, unnoticed by the usual listening shelves. It didn't hum, it didn't pulse, it simply lingered. Cora found it in the quiet well, a place no keeper visited unless they had no song left to give. A glass bowl of still water stood at the center, ringed with benches carved from moonstone. It reflected nothing, not faces, not light, not time. And in the center of the water today, a slip of threadbare cloth. Selah was with her. She crouched beside the well, careful not to breathe too loud. "It's empty," she whispered. "No," Cora replied. "It's forgotten." The cloth bore no ink, no weave pattern, no memory. But the moment Cora touched it, a soundless shiver moved through the archive. Not a tremor, a recognition. Selah flinched. "I think it knows it's been forgotten." Cora nodded, slowly lowering the cloth into a jar. "We'll keep it until it remembers." For weeks, the cloth remained still, but every time they passed it, they felt it. Not like a tune waiting to play, more like a name waiting to be spoken. Then, one night, as Selah played a simple scale in the heart seat, the cloth floated. No wind, no motion. It rose in its jar like a feather remembering how to fall. Cora rushed forward. The cloth began to hum, but not with notes, with breath, a cadence, slow and steady. Inhale, exhale, pause. Then a whisper. I wasn't born a song, but I watched one die. The jar trembled. Cora's eyes welled. Sella set down her lyre and whispered, "Do we keep it?" Cora didn't answer. She opened the jar instead. And the breath spilled out like mist, curling across the archive's marble floor, rising toward the star-lit ceiling. The constellations dimmed, then realigned. And a new kind of shelf opened. This one didn't hold baubles or scrolls or thread. It held spaces, open, silent, sacred. A sign above read, "Lullabies that became people." Sella stood frozen. "But what do we place here?" Cora whispered, "Nothing. This shelf isn't for keeping. It's for letting go." The breath mist shimmered once more, then drifted upward like a spirit being summoned to rest. After that, silence itself began to hum differently. The archive was no longer just a place of songs lost. It was a place where silence could become music again. Not all lullabies were written. Some were lived. Some were witnessed. And some, like the cloth, were the final echo of a song that once saved someone and was never sung again. Cora added a final note to the archive's great logbook. Today we remembered something that never wanted to be heard, and we listened anyway. Sella smiled quietly beside her, then lit a single candle, and left it burning, for whoever still waited in silence. The final verse of a keeper. The archive was quiet again, not because it was empty, because it was complete, at least for now. Sela stood before the new shelf of spaces, lullabies that became people, her hands folded behind her back. She wore a different cloak now, deep violet, stitched with silver thread in the shape of open hands, the mark of a senior keeper. Cora watched her from a distance. Her own cloak hung loose on her shoulders, sea blue and softened with years of quiet use. She had not sung in some time. She had not needed to. Sela's melodies now traveled further, reached deeper, and touched the parts of the archive even Cora hadn't known existed. And now, it was time. The moment she had always known would come, though she never imagined it would feel like peace. She approached Sela slowly. Sela turned, sensing her before she spoke. "You're leaving," she said, not as a question. Cora nodded. "Not forever, just for now." Sela's eyes softened. "Where will you go?" Cora glanced up at the skylight. A single thread of sunlight stretched through it, brighter than ever before. "I don't know, but there are lullabies out there that were never lost, only waiting." She reached into her satchel and pulled out the first jar she'd ever held, the one that hummed of loneliness, the one that led her to Milo. It was still, but it glowed gently, like a candle burned low with love. She handed it to Sela. "This was my beginning," she said. "Let it be your anchor." Sela held the jar as though it were alive. "Will the archive sing to you wherever you go?" Cora smiled. "It always has." Then from the shelves, from the stones, from the hidden threads woven into the very bones of the library, a soft song began, not sung by a keeper, not echoed from a bottle, not bound in a scroll, but breathed by the archive itself. A lullaby for the one who had kept it alive. Sela stepped back. Cora walked forward. She didn't look behind, didn't need to. The melody followed her, carried her, and when she stepped through the final arch, the one that only appears when it's time, she didn't disappear. She became a note, carried gently into the world. In time, children whispered stories of a melody they'd heard in dreams, of a voice that hummed when no one else was near, of a comfort that arrived not in words, but in rhythm. And deep in a library, built on sighs and saved by song, a young keeper quizzed a hand over her heart and whispered, "She's still singing. The end."